What's up, guys? We've got a huge list of things to do to this car before we can get it running. Today I'm going to try to get the hood pins in. We've got new hood latches, cut out the front radiator support, the whole core support, and make room to lean the radiator forward a little bit more. We're going to mount the catch can, loop off the coolant hoses that we need that used to go to the heater core. And then we also need to start working on the fuel system, because we're going to upgrade the pump and the regulator so that we can get the tuning done to have this run on E85. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and take care of the oil catch can. And in order to do this, we're going to go ahead and remove the coolant reservoir and the line going over to that, because that's going to be in the way once we go to remove the whole core support anyway. So we're going to take that out. And then that'll give us access to the heater hoses as well to put that elbow in. Now, I busted up my tripod, which my new one's not in yet, so I'm going to try and get this all filmed without the tripod, and hopefully the footage won't be too bad. But let's go ahead and knock out this oil catch can. Alright, so now that we've got that out of the way, you get a better view of this 3D printed block that they make. It's actually two pieces where they can sandwich it together with these lines that run up to your throttle pedal, and then your check engine light and OBD2 port. And then I've got my coolant hoses here, which we'll take care of in a minute. Actually, let's go ahead and take care of that first, because that should be a quick fix. Alright, now what I'm doing, in the previous video I mentioned, you know, these go over to your heater core, which comes through here. I've deleted the heater core, and ideally I would just loop these on the back of the motor. There's not enough room for me to do that. I will do that the next time I pull this motor out, but I want to have this running you know, and test a bunch of things before I pull this motor out again. So what I'm going to do right now is just use a 90-degree elbow to hook these two lines together to just loop that heater core line. Alright, so the heater core is done now. Let's go ahead and mark the spot where we're going to mount our oil catch can. This is the oil catch can that I bought. It's from Mishimoto. It's a compact one. Now, when you buy a catch can, you want to make sure that you actually do your research. I'll post the link in the description for this one, but as you can see, it's not just an empty can. You know, there's some that are just an empty can, and that's not going to do anything to catch the vapors, which is the whole point of the oil catch can in the first place. So they've got several different methods in here. You've got baffles, and then you've got like a brass screen, and then a bigger like condensing disc before it goes down into the actual can. And what this does is takes the oil vapors that are coming out of your crankcase, and then they're getting caught here, condensing, so that the oil and everything gets, you know, put down at the bottom of the can, and then clean air should be coming out of there and going back into your intake. But it's really important on a direct injection motor, because you don't have fuel injectors in the intake ports or anything like that to spray the valves with fuel and keep them clean. And so, you know, that oil going back into your intake manifold can build up carbon on your intake valves and everything there. So, because we've got our coolant reservoir over here, I'm actually going to mount the oil catch can right about here. And so that should still allow me to come in here, and there's actually a drain plug on the bottom. So I'll be able to set something underneath here and pull the drain out. The kit comes with a couple self-tapping sheet metal screws, which we're going to use right now just to initially mount it, but then we'll put some riv nut inserts in here, you know, so that the whole thing can be taken off without you know, without having to worry about getting back here, because I'm going to seal this whole area off, you know, with probably in a method that won't make it super easy to get back into. So anyway, we're going to riv nut that eventually, but today we're just going to mark it, and then we'll get it mounted. Alright, I'm just going to keep it loose right now, and that way we can move it around once we've got the reservoir back up on here. Now the other sides, this piece clips on right here, and this goes right in here. Now the factory hardline just came straight across, so I cut that out, and we're going to use this 3/8 tubing, or I'm sorry, it's yeah, it's 3/8. So I'm going to clamp it on here, and then clamp it on here, and we'll squeeze it on top of these fittings and have it run underneath here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in place so we can get an idea of how we need to run these lines. Alright, so that's job done on a couple of things. We've got the elbow put in between the heater core hoses there. So that will take care of, you know, the heater loop, and then we've got the catch can mounted, and that's really the only place where I figured I could mount it, and so that's why I got a compact one in this application, but it should do just fine. Now if you want to, you know, drain it less frequently, you know, you may want to go with a bigger one, but since this is going to be on the track most of the time, after, you know, a few sessions I can just drain it, and if that's too often, then, you know, after an entire track weekend or something, but this should do just fine. Anyway, we've got that taken care of, and the hoses are neatly routed. Got the one going back here and then up to the front. So now the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove these sections where the factory hood sits, and then we're going to put the new pins in so that we can mark where on the hood we need to go ahead and cut out. Alright, so these are the hood pins that I've got. Well, hood latches I should say. They're not just pins, but this is what a lot of the race teams use. But they're just, to me, they look better than a normal hood pin. And you can get these with a lock if you want to put it on a car that you drive on the street and you don't want anybody tampering with. But what we're going to do is take these pins and put them in the same exact spot. Now you can put them anywhere that you want. I'm going to put them in the same spot as where the normal hood bumpers are, because we're going to be cutting out this whole middle section, and then once I've got the nut in there, I can determine how high I want this rod to stick up after the fact. But what I want to make sure to do is, since I want the hood to sit exactly the same height as you know, it sits right now, I want to take the nut that this comes with and set it down, and then measure out the same exact height so I can cut down this rubber stopper, and then that way when the hood comes down, you can set it up so that it still latches onto here, but you don't want all the force to be on this pin. So if you can have it where it sits flush down on the stopper and then the hood pin holds it down, that's basically how you want it, just like a factory latch. So we're going to go ahead and put the nut on the bottom of here and measure it out, and then I'll cut this stopper so that the hood will sit down at the same exact height that it sits right now. Alright, so I've got this side mounted down, just kind of eyeballing where the pin should go. It may not even be high enough, but I can move it up later. I just need it high enough where I can mark it on the hood once we shut the hood. So I've got this side done. I'm going to go ahead and knock out the other side. Alright, so now that both of these pins are installed in a temporary kind of setup, I'm going to go ahead and lower the hood, and we'll see where the pins hit on this hood so we can go ahead and drill the first holes. Alright, so right there, we just need to make a mark. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, there's a good mark there. And then on this side, we're going to do the same thing. Now, to keep metal shavings from drilling, from falling down on the motor or any openings I still have down there, I've just thrown a tarp over real quick. You can throw a welding blanket or whatever you got, but I'm going to go ahead and drill out these 2 holes, and then we'll be able to see where the pins are going to hit on the top of the hood so we can start cutting out for the actual latches. Alright, so I've got the bottom holes drilled, and I've set the hood down, and then I just had the hood or the hood pins just high enough where they barely hit the bottom of the hood, and then do the old trick of slamming the hood down on it. Now, this will only work with a metal hood, and honestly, it's up to you if you want to take the risk. Let me see if I can. You can kind of see the way the light warps there where I've got the dot marked, but there's just barely. Now, obviously, if you have the hood pin sticking, you know, way up when you do this, it could, you know, potentially leave a much bigger mark. You can also do the toothpaste trick where you put toothpaste on the top of the pin, set it down, look underneath where the toothpaste is. But this is something I saw years ago, and it always has seemed to work well. So with an aluminum hood, it's nice and soft, and like I said, I have the hood pin just barely up enough where it's going to hit this metal, and then if you hit it down hard enough, you get just kind of a tweak in the metal right there. And I did the same thing on the other side, but now I've just marked it with a pin, so I'm going to go ahead and drill that hole out, and then we can figure out where we're going to place the entire latch. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken basically a stencil of the mount for the actual latch, and then made a center line on the latch, and the way I want to mount it, it may be different than how you want it, but I wanted the center of the latch to run parallel with the edge of the hood. So I took my micrometer or my caliper and measured out kind of where I wanted. Obviously the center line needs to go through the pin the proper way, and we'll just turn the pin a little bit so it goes through here. Now I really wanted to have the latch go the other way around where the small end was forward, but the angle of the hood is a lot steeper up here in the front, and I don't think that will allow the pin to go through properly. So I'm going to do it this way. But anyway, so I measured out where I wanted the center line to be, and lined it up so it's exactly the same as on the top and on the bottom, and then taped it down. Now, before I did this, if you care about your paint, you probably want to lay down some painter's tape, which is what I've done underneath. Now, this is all getting repainted anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me, but just for for reference here, you want to throw down some painter's tape, and that way when you do all your cutting and measuring and everything, you don't mess up your paint. And if you mark on the paint or on the tape and you change your mind on something, you can just peel that off and put on some other tape. But the other thing I've done, just to make sure that we've got everything to match up to the other side, is I've written down the measurement from how far the center line is from the edge of the hood, and I've trimmed this piece of paper right along the hood line here, so then I can flip it over and make it pretty much the same on the other side pretty easily. So then I've taken a blade and marked out the center of each of the bolt holes, and what I'm going to do now is go ahead and take this template off, drill those bolt holes down, and then take this bracket once the bolt holes are in place, and cut out the center so that we could drop the latch down in. Alright, so we've got this marked off. I've got the holes drilled, And what I'm going to be using is just a pneumatic like mini saw, a little air saw, and this will allow me to cut right there. You can use a jigsaw if you want, or even like a Dremel tool with you know, a different, like a little cutoff wheel. There's a lot of different methods to do this, but if you've got any air tools, you can pick up one of these for like 10 bucks at Harbor Freight. I mean, this one's not great, but it does the job. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this side out, and we'll go ahead and get this side mounted up and then move on to the other side. Now, when you're doing this, make sure you absolutely have, you know, some kind of blanket or something over your engine bay, because this is going to be a lot messier than drilling was before. And then I've got just a little case here holding the hood up, so it's easier to cut this whole thing out, and it's not sitting on the pins that we have down there. So let me go ahead and do this, and make sure you wear eye protection, obviously, if you're using one of these little air tools. Alright, so there we go, one side done. The bottom piece just has nylon lock nuts that you put up into the piece, and it holds them in there. And I just slid it in since the inner part of my hood is actually cut out. I wanted to leave as much of the bottom structure as I could, so I was able to slide the other piece in and just put a you know, a little hole in the bottom for the pin to come up in. I'm going to go ahead and jump up onto the other side and go ahead and finish this off, so we can go ahead and cut the radiator support out. But in hindsight, if you're doing this in an RX-8, I would recommend going like horizontally this way, or picking a different place to put the pins, because with the pins coming up perfectly vertical, it's a hard angle for this latch to catch, and so I had to do some trimming so that this would sit up in here properly and latch in, and it would have been a lot easier to have it horizontally, and then you would have been able, the pin would just be twisted this way instead, and there's plenty of room for that. So anyway, there's one side down. I'm going to go ahead and take care of this other side. Alright guys, well, both of the hood latches are done. It took a lot longer than I thought it would. I thought we could just cut some holes and throw them in, but because of the angle of the hood, like I said, I had to do some adjustments on the latches themselves, and now they work. So if you're doing this on an RX-8, I would recommend doing them horizontally. I think it would be a lot easier. At least it looks like to me that it would be a lot easier. But now that we've got this done, it is the end of the day, so I'm gonna have to call it right now. But now that these are on, what we can do is, I've already removed the main latch and the cable that goes to it. I'm going to go ahead and remove the part on the hood, the latch part on the hood, and now that that's gone off the middle, we can go ahead and cut that whole center out, move the radiator forward, and we also need to look at the fuel. Go ahead and open up the top of the fuel tank and figure out what kind of fittings we need for the regulator, fuel filter, and upgraded fuel pump that I got. That way we can get all the lines and get that taken care of as well. So we'll jump on that tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Take it easy.